Hello, America. Not just independently and grouped and together, but that simultaneously. And not just that simultaneously. That simultaneously in relationship to an identity of value/value progression as one identity of positive that is also positive unto itself, where and how positive and negative are two distinct identities of volume, as value as nature, / nature as value simultaneously. See criminal insidiousness. I am not a lawyer, but positive could be and can be and recorded was used and was self-valued, no. Through American history, per a breaching method that was left entrenched, that kept all victim predators with fact-cheaping natures, with opinions and with delusions, tactically differentially, incapable of defending premises treatments tactically, criminally themselves without valuing as identity, no, which is a simultaneous relationship to what is positive and negative. So this is volume science. Through other means, they realized needs to keep volume science and the short words, and increasingly the active words, and the progressive words of all identity ground locations, areas, and states, all locations, including homes, needed to self-value the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures blamed on other things, others, and themselves, which is a phenomenon that generated what locked that down into an invisible but still discernible infrastructure of arrays, syntax oriented, syntax organized by the order of a predicate auxiliary system method that came from semi-ancient times, knowing that for other reasons that they wouldn't be able to attend to, nature would continue to demonstrate negative value nature progression acts and natures, for example, in relationship to how this ancient republics, intercampuses systems, and sciences have a grounded relationship to our, and a concentrated value/value relationship, especially differentially to our quality of fact treatment nature, where and how we are positive and negative simultaneously as identity nature, as is actually the course of the short words, and so increasingly the active words and progressive words in relationship to the answer to questions regarding how computers work. For example, regarding how nature works is the answer to how the environment works. All exceptions in exception nature are a demonstration of it. Criminal insidiousness is in nature. For example, I am not a lawyer, I'm not a police force, I'm not a criminal. It is evidence of that and how the lawyer, private law, all private industries, all overt criminal enterprises, all private criminal enterprises, victim predator, whatever the narrative is with that, they left out a lot. Everybody. But with that, what they also missed is how that is exploited. And how that is fact-cheaping nature oriented. How that is syntax oriented. In relationship to the hardware engineering of the Earth's actual native value/value progression system, inseparable from, distinctly, but while as non-distinctly, the value, our value as nature / nature as value simultaneously, where and how we are temporary positive, where and how its nature is making more and more temporary / lasting forever nature, which is permanently bound, I'll gather round. This temporary positive is lasting positive, but because it will only stay positive unto itself. It made exceptions, and it made exception nature. For example, where and how Earth is exceptions in exception nature as value as nature / nature as value distinctly and non-distinctly from the rest of space nature. It is here a concentrated value. All that debating and trying to take the side, pretending other, does, for example, is simultaneously defend syntax nature, fact-cheaping nature that degrades the value of the difference of atmosphere as space and ground as space. Space is a semi-nature, invisible but still discernible. Everything has distinct identities of invisible. The subject and the verb are two distinct but non-distinct, invisible but still discernible identities of value / value progression. So we have as evidence with the doctors of each of the sciences, we have each of the branches already being and having been used as victims to the defenses of blaming things on others themselves for a theater that is an identity theft fraud method, overt / insidious, but everyone missed it because the only way you could see it is through the remote uses of each identity of branch, of their cover-ups of it. For example, right back to all identity ground locations. It is clear as day when you observe this, and where and how it's fact-cheaping nature / syntax nature oriented. Whenever I use the word nature, I'm speaking about identity. Identity's identity of relationship to itself, per what is true always, not as exceptions. There's one identity of truth that is at itself still, while as all exceptions, not denying the slightest exception, and while as exception nature. And I see again criminal insidiousness. These are phrases and are words like predicate acts and criminal insidiousness, wrongdoers, wrongdoing, that have to be used to explain American history, to answer the questions properly. A breaching method knew that what's not going to answer those questions properly is going to need to value hurt each identity of correlation nature's means to reveal answers properly in relationship to where and how we have to have preserved. We have to have liberated before they can be preserved and healed the ancient sciences. That is our obligation to assume that the Native Americans had taken from them, non-distinctly from how. It was hid by how sickly, not distinctly, everyone, even individuals. Native Americans A through Z, they were worse than divided and conquered. Nations, people are divided and conquered negative. There were an identity of negative value nature progression, self-valued by a breaching method that came from semi-ancient times that knew modern nations could be founded upon locations, areas, and states, to invested to uses of fake and criminal and seditious natures of positive treatments and of negative treatments as victims of a specific kind of child abuse that is simultaneously elderly abuse, connected, sickly, distinctly too. each age and each nature of difference is not only a target, in other words, it was already, in other words, this was sophistication here since before our founding parents were born. Crazy, 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 crazy laws against every single individual. And that was force sustained. That method knew that it would force manifest. Positive, more and more negative, victim predators. There is no, the short answers are prevented. The short words proper. Positive. So, no, people are going to have mental health as a subject they need to have addressed. The mental health industry is recorded more towards the furtherance of overt criminal enterprises and of their drugs, and of roles with the location's worst crimes and criminals, because they also had roles with attaching fake things in databases, and roles with uses of illusions temporarily acted by people in relationship to the kids of all that involved with interbranch locations, every single one of them. Every single identity of the ground location was kept and is kept effectively, needing to value how correlation nature is offensively hurt by people in relationship to the only people we have, that we have to fact cheap in nature say, in other words, there are doctors of mental health that are involved with attaching people to fake conversations with themselves, sequence shifting with various natures of judges and courts at the same time that themselves had crimes outside of the courts, outside of their medical locations. They're even attaching they're doing this through time. They're putting fake things in databases. They're using their roles with sexually juxtaposed with other natures of crime, but sexual, because of how they keep types of investigators, types of investigations. And they have the former director of the FBI, Robert Lusk, and other agencies also recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed uses of their identities, uses of them starting fights, for example, with Gold Star families, out of sequence, lying to and having lied to and having lied to those families, all victims, predator defenses of just to that spot. Well, everyone. That's not what's told to them. See, but no one follows sequence. No one follows mandated law too. So interbranch, they've been, for example, in Wethersfield and in Hartford, Connecticut, distinctly, non-distinctly, the regular police forms. And simultaneously, the regular police forms are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with other police forms through time, and private police forms through time, with uses of identity ground locations, like involved with on-off campuses, a vertical and horizontal organized crime method roles that is manifest, self-value, because it is used by worse than that, because how and where this was fact cheap in nature and syntax nature oriented. When I say nature, I'm talking about an identity. I'm talking about identity's value/value progression, quality of diffusion that is simultaneously positive and negative relationship, while it is temporary positive. This is where heaven and hell came from science that demonstrates, not what they teach about it. All identity of the ground locations are still sense and sensibilities. For example, use Jane Austen's phrase, are still syntax nature, fact treatment nature, sequence treatment nature, simultaneous treatment nature. When I say nature, I'm talking about the value/value progression that we are. that human bodies are individually grouped in together, species identity of volume /S. As a species, there is only one way that we can tap the might of that and have it be also positive onto its system, which makes the phenomenon of what's going out as value, triggering more value to what's coming into Earth distinctly, non-distinctly and simultaneously in relationship to the other rest of space and nature, because all that is in relationship to that system that is itself what generated that is the value, the scientific value of every identity of value progression individually grouped in together, which is one system that is native pure. That is why presidents had to be presidents and chief, because they don't have the freedom to be chief yet, because they don't have the short words allowed to be defended, because every location, area, and state, every science, simultaneously but further, and simultaneously private databases, relationships, simultaneously in relationship to life progressions that strangers need to value, the same sequence shifts, the same finite, active, progressive lies, identity thefts, frauds, and uses of them missed, but overt / insidious right in our face, simultaneously, against those kids that end up in jail. What really leads to that? Against what happened and is happening to their parents, who are left in a trap, not caused by what they blame it on, as victims. Then they defend that. And they defend it where? Anywhere they're going to go. Those identity of the ground locations were already used by something that everybody missed. They can't become a secret sophistication ulterior from this. They are fighting to keep law and to keep debates and arguments, fake sides of correlation nature's trinity. Self-valued sequence shifts. Self-valued criminally foreign influence premises treatments. Finite, active, progressive. And identity treatments. And the sciences share an identity. The same way. Same one. That is shared individual grouped together distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. And so when we look at what is simultaneous, for example, with computers, that's the subject. The identities of the hardware, the identities of the different syntax that don't work together, they share a temporary / lasting relationship to coordinates of the, not just the screen, the sound, the frequencies. You could learn a lot of things on YouTube. You could learn about see, but all the sciences are identity of the ground, locations, their types, abridged. And they say, well, that's not my job. I don't have time treatments. This is what the law tells me to do. And see, where that is a relationship to our syntax nature, human communications, human relations, self-relations, intra campuses. There is, manifest, exploitation of where and how this breaching method knew that all locations, areas, and states would be propagated as fact treatment nature qualities that would force leaders to entertain, and worse, to stay in inclusion with how all locations, areas, and states, all sciences, all private database relationships increasingly were our criminally foreign influence from off those locations as victims, but as victims that self-evaluate, because no one fathomed how it was going to be exploited. This is why we have self-value recorded in suburbs, and in the one George Washington had to leave slavery in the North. It was in the North, and it was in this town, Wethersfield, Connecticut, where he had to meet with the French general right before the last battle of the Revolutionary War, where they didn't have the ability to have unity, but they made the phenomenon of the ability to have unity through the counter-extortion of James Madison's plan, which he didn't have free speech, and George Washington didn't have free speech. No one would want slavery. George Washington cannot tell a lie. He didn't say this. I mean, I didn't read he said this, but there are proofs that him or James Madison or someone, they may be together. They're trying to tell us. But anyway, it is recorded anyway. Let's use the real proofs, because there are still remote uses of the syntax nature, fact treatment nature of identities of the law, all of them, distinctly. And that is exploited too, and that is evidence. But they have been covering it up because they've been lying about what's actually recorded. They've been putting people into faked audio and video on police locations. There are two Mendez police, at least in their family. I never had a class with them. They are recorded, confessed, demonstrated also with courts and judges and prosecutors, with uses of Facebook page, pretending passions and emotions and directing people to pretend delusions to cover their life progressions from where and how the identity, the ground locations of various natures of courts and on and off the state judicial branch offices. There are recorded locations next to it involved with juxtaposed natures of organized crime and sequence shifts, finite, active, and progressive lies and identity thefts and frauds roles relying upon them. Wethersfield Pizza has strangers that sought me out to confess and record. I never met Maria Vizino the entire time she was in high school. Never met her. I only heard her name repeated to me by a Mark Violet and by other people recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with the house on my street. That is in the narrative of the Wethersfield police forging and switching names over the last few months, distinctly, non-distinctly, and simultaneously. Also, a DeMoro family and others recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with the manipulation of the houses around, and evidence racketeering, like in other words, making identity thefts and frauds. We're going to deal with it. We're not going to deal with their readings of it, because those identity, the ground locations courts, our roles having been fabricating audio and video, methods of simultaneously pretending other, and for example, speaking things into records out of sequence that are untrue. Now, these are people with physical delusions that are pretending other people did because they already pretended they had conversations with us. And so we can't get a response. For example, from Hartford Hospital, there's a Leahy family, and there are a whole bunch of people tied to a Dillon family that are recorded, confessed, and demonstrated three times, involved with predicate acts on my street, and with intercities, various natures of courts are criminally involved with them, and with medical locations, and with child databases, and with their family member. The whole family is associated with a triage, where and how they have police forms with badges that are juxtaposed with our regular police. They have interstate sickly distinctly meant the phrase mental health by the news and by the branches of government, for example, private, but also with overt criminal enterprises, which they use to keep leveraged. In other words, there already were libel aggressions from every standing position that claimed to be integrity, right to all identity of the ground sciences. And that already was a remotely used. So there were already other influences over what is manifest, where and how opinions and convictions originally and still are recorded leveraged against the nature of the law. With, for example, where the sequence shifts are critical, because they're all speaking anyway. They were painted into a corner per this method of child abuse. It also has conjunction to locations next to the campuses, intercities, professional places and not, that are missed. See, this is where they keep the sense and sensibilities of all those people involved with elections locations, of the locations next to schools, that is also tied to, next to all identity of the ground locations. So when you deal with, like, when the post office becomes a topic, it has nothing to do with that. And all exceptions in exception nature are a demonstration of that. Because people make convictions and opinions regarding what people say with short words. For example, is recorded people tied to former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, and to kids that had roles with various natures of overt criminal enterprises, and the witness protection program stewards, and other FBI and CIA involved with the kids in the narratives where they've been attaching little kids and their family to fake words and fake locations and fake ties to themselves, fake natures of ties to themselves and others. Now there's a Joshua Julian associated with a Principal Child Defenders Campus since before that, who's recorded with my town's police chief and with his daughter, an extended family member I also barely know of. That, you know, these are people that try to make quick exceptions to make it appear as if they know you. And as their roles in background, as sources that are being used, that they know are criminally foreign influenced. But this is where and how the courts and the police forms and the breaching method, all these nations, criminally legalized, but legally have been exploiting all identity of the ground locations. That is a maintained outcome where and how it's fact-cheating nature oriented. So where and how we have to address the virus that is on this, the viruses that are on this computer, that is Earth. That is where all the locations, see, it's making it seem like the computers doesn't work right. It's too small. We couldn't afford the kind of things we'd need to do to make things right. So that's because of the syntax nature of illness. So we have to have a place and means to defend ourselves from families that have been in collusion with interbranch, that were in collusion with foreign. That is not only on the records. It is fluent through overt criminal enterprises the same way it is fluent through nations. What is the proof of that? Their members and their roles with identity of the ground locations like that train the police. There are people associated with karate locations and things like that, associated with the Dillon family, who's one of the police forms 3 times recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with predicate acts with Hartford Hospital and with kids on my street and with others on and off the Principal Child Defenders Campus. Now there are people with New Britain Superior Court with rape threats since before that. and with their Facebook page, the Britain Superior Four Horse Facebook page, and there are links to they have more than one page. And you know, these are also people recorded. There's an officer, Jerry Miller, who is also recorded, confessed, and demonstrated, and they confirmed people on Meadowgate, where it turns into Randy Lane, are involved all along Route 3 with sequence shifts, with finite active progressive, you know, evidence racketeering, illusions roles. Now that they don't even realize because of a Kerr family. Now this was confessed before the coronavirus started, so that delayed me, and it was already tied to recorded private and regular police forms on and off Trinity College, where are also having been involved with people associated with former director of the FBI Robert Luskin and his lawyer Robert Chevrier, and a bunch of federal criminals that are associated with him and his co-defendants in a 2006 case. That before that, and right before it, were recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with predicate acts against me and others that no one realizes, but they're recorded. And they're also being relied upon by the people in the background with the phones at the school that have been fabricating audio and video, but since before the principal child offender got caught off the campus. These are also people roles as the people tied to the former director of the FBI. Intercities with other campuses and locations next to them, and the buildings next to Fox Connecticut News. Now there's also a Perone family, I don't know, sought me out to confess, record, demonstrate with others, speaking through others too. No, that 3 boyfriends she had at the same time. One of them had a twin brother, so it was like 4. And then the other ones had brothers. I don't know them. They're involved with acting so they can record fake things to pretend other. Because they have rules with former Mayor Gold and with all the different political parties and processes. Because they have this child method where they're putting fake things in databases, where they have the courts and the police forms already having been used remotely, where and how they're manifest treatments of positive and negative, of time treatments, getting over on forever nature, always too fast, too slow, with answers to questions. For example, distinctly, non-distinctly, Hartford Police and Wethersfield Police are recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed evidence, reception, racketeering, identity thefts, and frauds roles against our town's people. So we have no place to go to report things. They even put people fake reports, fake audio and video on the Wethersfield Police Department. That's how long they've been having to hide lie progressions tied to what they've been doing with a house on my street involved with it since before those people moved into it. It is also recorded how they have the courts and police forms with crime methods of sustained uses of investigations and investigators sustained through all different kinds of things, used to cover up, used to keep things going to courts that are criminally involved with because they're already using all locations with physical delusions too. But there are rules predators, so you can't heal their minds until you have a place to be able to counter them. Forging names, switching names, faking conversations with us. So, and you know, respond for them. They switched names when I was in front of them. They were fabricating audio and video. They're still bringing people into courts where they're still fabricating audio and video with the people that are involved with the breaching method, predicate acts against everyone. This is what American history is about. How the lawyers were inclusion with that, with physical delusions too, as nature's pretending to be about positive. How their arguments their premises treatments, their sequence treatments. They can't defend that in us from what exploits that. And in other words, they can't afford the short words to what to do. So in other words, we can make temporary hyper positive locations to bring reliefs. How many people would need it if we had brought water? Put it in some kind of a thing that's not going to be plastic melting. Knowing there's fires and things like that coming. We could even build a mountain for, make money doing it. See, they put money before the identity that is more finite than zero. Before the identity that is simultaneously greater than infinity, while the value of three identities of zero. And of every value, physical, temporary / lasting positive, that is also positive or negative unto itself, as itself. Because where and how we are value as its volume, is where and how is the only identity of volume. That is a singular identity of volume. So the ancients would teach this by using the halo. This is my theory. And this is what Jesus was trying to have us, took multi-front counters to already criminally re-engineered, tactically criminally re-engineered, without anyone realizing it. They realized it, but they blamed on other things, others themselves, and they self-valued that the real cause of it. No one fathoming that nature's, the ancients, the semi-ancients, a semi-ancient predicate acts delivery system method, and or an archetypal criminal enterprise, and or a human fact-cheating nature / syntax nature breaching organized crime method. It conformed. So we have to deal with the sequence shifts. These are also sequence shifting people with locations, hiding the life progressions would they have that pulled it off from inside the Ninth Circuit Court, right outside from where the World Trade Center is in Manhattan, New York. That was they post-dated documents to appear late to the panel of judges. That was proven. That led up to the 2006 case with a Thaddeus Grabowski and with an Allison Mulcahy. I never had a conversation with Allison Mulcahy. John Maiano told me that communicated with she's involved with a Domain family. I also two times they tried to film like I know them. They tried to make an illusion like I know them because they were involved with predicate acts. I didn't realize them when I was a kid. They were typing fake things in databases, roles with it, with kids that weren't in my class, with my town's police chief, her husband, and them. I don't know them. This is everyone speaking through others too. And then if you go to ask them about it, the strangers that you only know because they sought you out in the first place with confessions tied to this. Then, in other words, like a Steven Stocco and Maria Vizino have roles with predicate acts, with judges, and with prosecutors' cliques, on and off 2 Route Highway, and on and off the state judicial branch offices, and they have with a Weathersfield Pizza right near there. And I don't know them. They're trying to make it look like it's personal and things like that, because of their roles also with predicate acts on and off Central Connecticut State University. With those people like the Mark Violet repeated her name a bunch of times. like when we drove by with other people associated with the house that the Wethersfield police brought in to this. And they also have a Phil Collo, recorded, confessed, and demonstrated involved with predicate acts, with kids, with drug crimes, and with doctors, with crimes with kids, with these Mendez police and a whole bunch of other police associated with this Dillon family, involved with predicate acts on my street with them through time. Wire crime acts and methods that involve, that are since before Tim O'Brien called, and his father Dennis O'Brien and Andrew O'Brien and his mother, years ago, they were involved with calling the police about because they called 911 and hung up. And this was associated with when I was in 5th grade, I believe. But they weren't in my class. So I never saw them on campus. The only time was like in 1st grade. So or like outside. They did like things with narratives that involved the former Mayor Gold. He's involved with all kinds of medicine, drugs, crimes, and drugs, crimes. Everyone speaking through other, and that being forced. I never had a conversation with him in my life. Debbie Gold is involved with sequence shifts with them. She recorded, confessed, demonstrated roles, confirmed roles with the confessions of the O'Brien family. These are also in relationship to that which me and everyone has increasingly needs to use, which is the increasing value, fact sheet nature-wise, of the correlation of how fake positive treatment, criminal ceases natures of positive and negative identities of the law. They were used remotely. They were used criminally foreign influence and delusions raw, fake. See, we have now this knew that we would have to demonstrate that. So, but these people involved with sequence shifts, they're also involved. There's a judge's family that recorded, confessed, and demonstrated. There are girls on 2 Rod Highway and off of 2 Rod Highway that they forced to roles. They don't even know. And to the extent they do know, they don't know the extent of it. But they said that, they demonstrated that's also tied to, all the businesses, all the differentials of identity of the ground locations where they can be exploited as fact in nature. Now that's also as people involved with on and off Trinity College, on and off CCSU, on and off all the campuses of each age and nature, roles with predicate acts, individually grouped and together sickly distinctly, everyone missing how sickly non-distinctly. So you have to allow me and others to demonstrate the switching names, because the switching names by courts, prosecutors, and state's attorneys are also involved with that, with predicate acts on and off Central Connecticut State University, on and off Trinity College, where and how that is through time also per their roles with known but also with unrealized conjunctions to the child campuses and uses of that. See, well, we could discern this, but we have to have mandated law followed. They have the police. They say, "Oh, you know." They have people speak for the other communities. They have people think for them, but then they want to have people. They say, "Oh, hey, how come you don't come down and speak around the community?" Because they've been in the background fabricating audio and video with locations with the other branches of government, with the other police forms. It is evidence that and how they leave out, they make police one identity when they bring it as a fact treatment nature topic in relationship to the most forsaken, and where and how there was so much juxtaposed. That's not complicated at all. It's just extensive. juxtapose that is leveraged against them, incapable of defending itself and of affording them, even to hear the answers to the questions most critical to them, like what caused slavery. So I'm going to take over. You have to help me. Someone's got to hear me and show me through. Where there are identity ground locations influenced by that. People don't follow mandated law. They self-value roles with our directors, criminally foreign influence, delusions raw. For example, with mental health care, with doctors with medicine crimes, and with physical delusions that are supposed to be experts on such things, that are involved through time, which with the branch of the government, with the campuses also. See, this is a parallel. Other private companies, like Facebook, for example, like YouTube, they are being influenced, hurt by the agencies' uses of them, because they were used remotely. All identities of the law, right back to all standing identity, the grounds, locations, where and how the fact-cheating nature, so engineering works. So we have to learn about everyone has to see what is actually recorded, which are criminal uses of criminally foreign influence, positive treatments and negative treatments, and passions and emotions, because they can't afford aggression or care, where in pursuit of evolution science, using that identity of truth that is also, as all exceptions, the same identity of value/value progression. So but we could still stay other than the native systems, but it is an increasing tie to our fact-cheating nature and to our words/values, like the word value itself. So we're not allowed to have free speech. That's evidence. What did and does that and exploits it has to pretend other. They have to have a style of doing so. They have to fight nature. They have to pretend other. They have to use the word environment.